Welcome back to the Nonprofit Spotlight, the show where we sit down with the change makers right here in Northern Virginia, the nonprofits, the founders, the activists, and the volunteers who are rewriting what it means to belong and to contribute. Today, we are thrilled to introduce to you to an organization doing just that in Fairfax City. The organization built on the belief that every person can work and every job can transform a life. Everyone Can Work is a 501c3 nonprofit on a mission to create permanent employment opportunities for young adults with developmental and intellectual disabilities. Born from a simple but powerful idea that meaningful work builds dignity, confidence, and community, Everyone Can Work invests in people first, not just jobs. How do they bring that mission to life? Through Cameron's Coffee and Chocolates, their flagship business enterprise. This isn't just a typical cafe or confection shop. It is a place where employees with cognitive disabilities work side by side with supervisors in a real business environment, mastering skills, earning real paychecks, and gaining independence. More than delicious coffee and handcrafted chocolates, Cameron's represents opportunity. It's about showing what, with the right support, training, and belief in someone's ability, people who too often are left out in the workforce can shine. In today's conversation, you'll hear from the people behind the mission, the stories of employees finding purpose, and why this work matters not just to them, but to all of us who care about equity and inclusion in our community. So pour yourself a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's start our conversation with Everyone Can Work, because everyone has something valuable to contribute. I'd like to introduce to our listeners and watchers, Cameron and Ellen. Cameron, Ellen, could you say hello and tell us a little bit about yourselves?
My name's Ellen Graham, and I think I'm best known as Cameron's mother. My husband and I started this with the idea that we would be full-time volunteers for up to 5 years. Well, we closed year 12 back in October, and I'm still a full-time volunteer. My husband died at the end of December 2024. So now it's just day by day, seeing how we grow. Cameron, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Cameron Graham. I live with my mom, and I do laundry and I do stuff around the house.
In addition to work.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, it is so great to have you both here on the podcast. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how Cameron's Coffee and Chocolate even came into existence, or what was the impetus or the inspiration behind such an initiative?
Cameron, by the time she hit high school, she really loved to bake and share what she baked, and she's very social, is the bottom line. So my husband and I really looked for kind of bakery-like environments. The exposure for that was, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Best Buddies, but it's kind of an offshoot from not exactly Special Olympics, but the same kind of concept, except you pair high school students and then they do fun things after school. And so Cameron had a peer who she was good friends with, and their fundraiser every year was an event called Life is Sweet, where each person got paired with a famous chef. And so Cameron was paired with a man named Patrick Bazin, who had been a chef in Washington and then opened his own restaurant in Vienna. And they developed a lifelong friendship. I mean, still friends. He used our products in his restaurant. So that was the initial concept of kind of baking. And we knew that when you look around, you can't walk into a bakery and just ask someone to hire your daughter. And that's not because people are closed-minded, but there are so many considerations, right? The consideration is, I don't know this person's skill level. I don't know how to help them when something goes wrong. And I also don't know what the risks are. Could they get burned? Could they, there's all kinds of risks. Could they get cut working in my kitchen? And so I think for many employers who don't employ our community, they're intimidated by the situation. It's not that they don't have a good heart.
From that relationship, what started the desire to open your own coffee shop?
Well, my husband was like what we would call a serial entrepreneur. And he turned to me one day and he said, how hard could it be? 12 years later, I can tell you, it was way harder than either one of us ever anticipated. But we started small. And so we started with the concept that we would open a bakery. But before we even opened, a business associate of my husband said, you ought to come see this business on Martha's Vineyard. They've been in existence for 25 years and they employ the community. So we went up there and they taught us everything. They taught us how to make chocolates. They told us where to buy the equipment. They shared their recipes. because they wanted more businesses like us, and they were wonderful. So then the concept was, okay, well, we know we're going to do like cookies and stuff, and we know we're going to do chocolates. But then when we came here to this location in Fairfax, it used to be a pizza shop. We figured there was no place to get a cup of coffee. So all of a sudden you kind of expand. It's like, okay, now we're doing chocolate, we're doing cookies, we're doing coffee. And then as our business grew, the things that we added were because of customer demand. So customers who came in here in the morning didn't want always to have a muffin, but they wanted a piece of quiche. So we started making quiche. So it's kind of like if you give a mouse a cookie. That's how we worked our way along.
Very good. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so let's shift into some of kind of the beliefs and ethos and values that are associated with Cameron's Coffee and Chocolate. So you often say that people with intellectual disabilities are unemployed, or at least that's what people say, not unemployable, right? Do you wish the broader community better understood about this distinction, or specifically employing within your community?
Absolutely. I think that for when people come into my store and they look at what we do, and maybe they're trying to evaluate, maybe there's someone they know who also has a disability, and they say, how can you tell whether somebody would be able to work in your shop? And I should back up a second and say, we staff at what's known as a 5-to-1 ratio. So we're supported employment. And that means that I hire one job coach to every 5 of my workers, and she supervises them as they go through their day. And so for that, my answer when somebody asks me whether or not somebody's a fit is, was the individual raised with expectations? And so those expectations can apply to our children who don't have disabilities or to our children that do have disabilities. When my son was in 3rd grade, it was a back to school night. And the teacher said, please let your son or daughters fall off a chair when they're in 3rd grade so that we don't watch them jump off a building when they're 30. And so initially for my son, I really embraced that idea. I thought, it's logical to have to deal with the consequences of your actions. But when you deal with people who happen to have intellectual disabilities, everyone wants to protect them. So they don't want them to have hurt feelings. If they spill the milk, everybody says, oh, wait, I'll get it for you. Well, that's exactly the wrong thing to do, because all the rest of us learn to be self-confident and be able to pick ourselves up when we have to deal with whatever the mess is or whatever the mistake is. And why do we take that away from people with intellectual disabilities? Because they're as capable of learning these things as anybody else.
Yeah.
And I really believe that.
And you found that to be the case with your own employees?
Any of them. If you haven't been raised with expectations and consequences, and we start hiring when you're age 22, because that's when you're done with Fairfax County Schools. If you haven't done it for the first 22 years of your life, it's very difficult for me to change things, right?
Got it. Yeah.
Because old dog, new trick, same concept.
Yeah.
And that's not true just for people with intellectual disabilities. It's true for everybody. We get set in our ways.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely. And so what's interesting is when you're talking about your employees and that worker ratio, one of the other things that you advocate for is permanent employment as opposed to short-term employment. Can you say a little bit about that and why that's important?
Sure. Well, I think there's 2 things that are important about that. I don't know if you know, but Cameron was really blessed in that we went to the same Giant the whole time she was growing up. And the store manager of that Giant hired her when she was just in high school and really worked with her, gave her a couple hours a week when she was first starting and then built her hours up. And so for 7 years, she worked there part-time. Giant does a great job with our community. We were opening this store just because we wanted her to be able to bake, but she could have kept working at Giant. But for many of my workers, the reason that they leave a job is because the manager changes. And when a manager changes, some managers don't feel like they're equipped to deal with our community. Again, that doesn't mean that person's bad, but they just don't have the skill set. And so then what happens is gradually hours get cut back or less days get scheduled. And that's called independent work versus supported group, which is what I am. When you're in a setting like that, you might be the only person who has special needs versus here in my store, we learn to appreciate everybody and we have a community. And so all of a sudden, when you have a larger group. You have friends and you have things to talk about and you have things to do. And that's not always true when one person or two people with an intellectual disability are put in a setting where there aren't other people
Yeah.
because the conversations aren't the same.
Right.
Not good or bad, just different.
And like any of us, right? We go to a job and we get a paycheck, but there's some additional value of going to the place where you love to work and you want to contribute and make the environment better, not only for yourself, but the rest of the people that you work with.
Right, right. They become another family to you.
So is that a good kind of analogy of what life is like over at Cameron's? A bit of an extended family?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Cameron, I was going to ask you a question if you don't mind. So on your own journey through school and work and being at Giant and community activities, what inspired you to be a part of the creation of Cameron's Coffee and Chocolates?
With my parents and a bake with my old job coach.
Right. So you like to bake. What else? What else do you like to do here?
Laundry.
Like to do the laundry. What's your favorite thing to make here?
The pretzels.
Dip pretzels.
Oh, nice.
So,
Excellent.
so can you tell him how many pretzels we do? Do we do a couple or do we do hundreds?
8 each.
We 8 to a bag, but how many do we do? Do we have lots of orders for pretzels?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
Yeah, we in a hotel.
We're in hotels now. Yeah, we'll explain that to him in a bit.
Yeah, we in
Okay.
hotels.
Yeah. So about how many pretzels do you make for hotels in a day?
Well, if you looked at all the teams in one day, and your team usually gets assigned like 50 or 80 for your team only, and I've got 5 teams, so we make hundreds of pretzels every day. Not
Hundreds
every
of
day do we have
pretzels.
orders. So some days they're not on the production schedule, but yeah.
Sure. Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's only one, right?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about kitchen? Tell them about the kitchen.
We made today special oils for that one.
Give them an example of something that's in the bakery case.
The espresso bars
Espresso bars, yeah.
with chocolate chips, ganache on top, and roll out. Sourdough? No.
Sweet dough.
Sweet dough.
Sounds delicious.
You try them sometime.
I will. Cameron, I had another question for you. What does it feel like to walk into the store and the coffee shop and to see your own name as the name of the business?
I love it so much.
You do?
I sell a lot of mom's friends and my dad's friends too.
You're a celebrity. Yeah. You keep trying to get more orders.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's got to be really special. I'm sure lots of people hope to see their name in lights or on a business someday. And you have that. That's really fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Tell about the hotel.
Well, I don't know if he wants the hotels yet.
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, please tell me whatever Cameron would like to share. You can
So,
feel
you
free
know,
to expand on that.
For all businesses, I'm talking about coffee shops in general now and other kind of small restaurants. Everything really changed for them after COVID. And we're part of that. You know, people's behaviors changed. They didn't stop on their way to work for coffee because for a long time they were working from home. They found out how much money they could save by not stopping for coffee and a muffin. And so those behaviors really haven't changed a lot. And like right now, foot traffic is slow. So for us, we had to find other avenues. And literally a woman and her husband came in a couple of years ago and said to me, so you have to appreciate our busiest time of year is the fourth quarter of the year. That's when everyone wants chocolate. You've got Halloween, you've got Thanksgiving, you've got companies giving Christmas boxes. And so for us, it's always a really busy time. And they came right when it was our craziest. And they said, we are going to start a business that's a B2B business. And we're going to represent nonprofits on one side and hotels on the other side. And I said, great. And she said, so we'd like you to be a part of it. And I said, great. I said, so do you have the website? She said, no. And I said, do you have any hotels signed up yet? She said, no. I said, well, how about you come back after you got it lined up and then we'll talk. And sure enough, I don't know, 5 months later, they came back and they were like, website's done, got hotels signed up, we're ready to add you. And so we did. And so at first it was kind of slow. And now it is what sustains us. And what's lovely about that is that our products, the products that sell through the hotels, the majority of them are made by my workers alone, which is just amazing. When you talk about those pretzels are one of the top sellers, and our trail mix. We make a trail mix that we've always had. but now it sells like crazy. I mean, I got an order today for like, I don't know, 200 or 300 bags of trail mix for one hotel. And so it gives us the hope of a path to a future.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's an intentionality, maybe culturally, to invest in businesses like yours that make multiple levels of impact.
So the way this woman went about it, she and her husband, they went about it as they got the people who owned the hotels to commit to spending a percentage of their budget on the website. And the website doesn't only have people with intellectual disabilities. It might have people who were abused or people who were all kinds of different ways to lift people up. It's an amazing experience.
That's awesome. And you can not only say that your workers are producing that product, but they can also say, well, it's in a variety of hotels and it's getting that much more exposure than the brick and mortar that you're sitting in right now.
Absolutely true. Right. And people write to us and say, oh my gosh, I was in California and I saw your products in California.
Yeah, that's great. For the folks who maybe have family members or know friends that have children or grandchildren with a intellectual disability and maybe looking for work and they don't necessarily know how to make those first steps or don't even know what a day would look like. Could you say a little bit about how a day in the life of Cameron's Coffee and Chocolate looks? Like what does that typical day look like?
Sure. So I'll start off with the idea that I feel that it's critically important because I live with the fear that maybe we won't always be here because I don't have a lot of people lining up to do this for free like I do. And a lot of people can't afford to do that. Right. And so how would my workers get jobs if I wasn't here? So the first thing starts with all the regular things that we take for granted: being at work on time, taking a shower, having fresh clothes on, all of those basics. When you walk in the door, you've got to be ready for work. And that means clean clothes too. And so all of those things are kind of reinforced here. And then the next thing I would say is you have to keep your workers busy all day long. So our shifts are 6 hours long, and for 5.5 hours, they're standing and they're moving around. So they don't stay in one room. So on the day they do packaging or on the day they do chocolates, they do a couple hours in each room and then they rotate. And so that's how we stay fresh. And every day is not the same. So like if her team starts in the kitchen on Monday morning, then on Tuesday morning, they're going to start in chocolate or packaging, or you clean the bathrooms first. So she's telling me to clean the bathrooms. And so you have to have lots of different tasks because all of us perform the best when we have a lot to do. We always get in trouble, all of us. We have too much free time, right? Human nature.
Yeah. So how do you balance the social mission with the realities of running a competitive food business? Like how do you balance some of those numbers you were just talking about?
The reality is that we always operate at a loss. We just
Okay.
do. But that's the whole concept that people think, well, you're a 501c3. Well, of course I'm a 501c3, but we wouldn't survive if I wasn't. If we didn't have donations to fill our gaps, we wouldn't exist. But for me, when we built out this store, and I'm sure since you've been here, you've seen, we have windows all over. So everyone can see exactly what we're doing all the time. And, there are lots of other nonprofits that don't even try to run a store. They just solicit donations to accomplish their mission. We can have a goal to be as profitable as possible, but we should acknowledge that if I'm teaching people skills that are hard for them, and at the same time, I spend part of the day working on life skills and social skills, not just work skills, because I think that when somebody's 22 years old, you don't give up on their development. And because of that, I have people who've figured out from the skills they've learned in our kitchen how to make a meal at home. We take all the teams once a week. Each team has a day. They go to shopping at the grocery store and they either buy stuff for their snacks or they buy something to make a meal with. And when you're 22 years old, life is so much better if you can choose what you want for dinner and know how to make it. But it takes a long time. You want to say something?
I cooked last night, ate for me, Mom. I made homemade meatballs in the oven, ground turkey with cheese,
ricotta cheese.
breadcrumbs, and I follow a recipe.
Sounds awesome. Sounds delicious.
And so you have to decide. I think that the important thing is that when you're a nonprofit, the question, and you're running a store, whether it's a thrift store or whether it's whatever you're doing, is are you fulfilling the mission? Because if you're fulfilling the mission, then everybody already realizes that you've been approved to be a nonprofit. The question is, for those people who are approved to be nonprofits, are they following the mission? And the way I do that is by the way we work, our open windows here every day so everybody can see what we do. And I also go through a full audit every year of my books because I want people to trust my organization. And that's how you do that.
And a 2-day assessment too.
Yeah.
So when people come in and say, grab a cup of coffee, they know that they're supporting you and the nonprofit, but maybe they didn't know that they could also contribute to it by making donations. Is that possible? So if there's listeners out there that or maybe not even coffee drinkers or chocolate eaters, but know the value that you bring to the community, do you have a donation portal, or do you take like physical donations, or how does that work for additional
So we have a
support?
website, and it's on our website. Both Everyone Can Work and Cameron's Chocolates has videos about what we do and who we are and how we do it. And there's a donation button there. We have a PayPal account. There's a donation, and there's a donation button on the store. So there's lots of ways for people to support us. And one of the concepts that we had that I didn't go over with you is that when we started the store, both my husband and I had business backgrounds. We were very analytic in the way we went about this. We went around and talked to a lot of people. And there's a man in Richmond who runs a training program and a catering service. And he spent a long time on the phone with me. And he said, don't ever mistake the fact that because people like your mission, they don't expect your product to be superior because of who's made it. So the thing is, they're not going to cut you any slack.
Okay.
You never want somebody to walk in your door if you have a mission like mine and say, well, that was ordinary. Starbucks can get away with it because Starbucks can sell you something that's been in their case for 3 days, but you're there for their coffee. And that's what you expect from Starbucks. But if I did that, I wouldn't get people back. And so we bake fresh from scratch every day. So then my husband was like, okay, so what are we going to do with the leftover baked goods? And it turned out that when we moved in here, we had do you know the Lamb Center?
Oh, yeah.
So they were on the other side of this Asian grocery store that's in our parking lot. So our workers used to take turns walking up with their job coach one-on-one and delivering the baked goods. But then the Lamb Center moved to the other side of the street, and I can't have my workers crossing 50. That's just too crazy an environment. But the guy with the Lamb Center, Dave, comes every morning and picks up whatever we have left over. So that's a twofold thing, right? The first thing is that our mission is serving somebody else. And on top of that, it's showing our workers that there are other people who really need what they've made. To me, that's a win-win.
Yeah, I'll just take a moment here to say that for our listeners, the Lamb Center is a daytime drop-in center for people experiencing homelessness in Fairfax City. And they were actually interviewed on season 1, so you can go back and listen to that interview with their executive director. Yeah, you're right. You're exactly in the same neighborhood, and the fact that you all can support one another not only supports 2 great organizations, but it does wonders for the impact it has on our community as well, which is just extraordinary.
Right.
So we've talked about the shop, what the workers do on a daily basis, the fact that you are in hotels and reaching far beyond your brick and mortar store. So how do you see the next year, 5 years, 10 years? Like, what's the future look like for Cameron's?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think, first of all, so I really was locked in on the 5-year number. And, then I was locked in like, okay, maybe 10 years. And now, this for me personally, and this is just my faith, this store never would have happened if it wasn't God's plan. And so I can make all the plans in the world and tell you what I think they're going to be. But if it's not God's plan, it doesn't matter. That's just the reality for me. And so if you ask me what I'd like to have happen is I'd like this nonprofit, Everyone Can Work, to become sustainable without me. I mean, this year I'll be 68. I could live to be 100 and I could still be working here. Who knows? But it would give me great peace to know that there was somebody else that's going to take it over and make it happen.
And that could be through personal physical help, or it could be in the form of maybe a large endowment or something that can provide the resources to pay that person to be there and to take the next steps. Is that fair?
Absolutely. But I mean, for me, I never knew when the woman from Procure Impact walked in and said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you in hotels. I wasn't looking for hotels.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was an option, right?
Yeah.
But it walked in the door.
That's great. Like I was just saying, we covered a lot of bases. Is there something that I missed or something that you'd want to share more about in terms of your experience?
For every one of my workers, instead of looking at potential weaknesses, every one of them has pockets of absolute brilliance, but they have to be given the opportunity to let them shine.
So how many workers would you say have come through your door in those 12 years of operations? Like how many lives have you personally touched in the way that you just mentioned, you think?
Because I also have parallel workers. I have job coaches who came to me one way and left another way. I don't know, hundreds at this point. For all of us, right? When I reflect back, I mean, I was a banker. I sat in a cubicle doing numbers. If you ever told me that this is what I would be doing, I'd say to you, that's not me. No,
Yeah.
you got the wrong girl. But the reality is that for all of us on our journeys, the skill sets we pick up along the way help us to get to the next thing we're going to be.
Yeah.
Right.
That's beautiful.
And sometimes it's easier if you embrace it than try to fight it.
Yeah. Well, you are an extraordinary individual. You and your husband, Cameron, is a joy to have here as well, and to be the face and the name behind such an extraordinary and incredible business.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank
of
you.
course. Thank you for all that you do for our community, and thank you for creating really high quality products and touching so many lives, especially in your community and their family and their friends. Our community is a better community because you are here, and we're thankful for you.
Thank you. That's nice of you to say.
Well, thanks for joining us today, and we hope to see you in person soon.
Great. We'd love it.
Take care.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.